Than 8% of Americans have personally read at least some part of the Mueller report. To be fair, according to recent polls, less than 8% of Americans have personally read at least some part of the Mueller report. To be fair, the 448-page document is not exactly an easy read, but it has huge significance for American democracy going forward. The Mueller report is divided into 2 volumes that are roughly the same size. Volume 1 investigates exactly how the Russians interfered in the 2016 elections and whether the Trump campaign coordinated with the Russian government to do so. Volume 2 details all the instances of potential obstruction of justice by Trump during the investigation. Let's start with Volume 1. The report shows that Russia's efforts to meddle in the 2016 election actually started in mid-2014, a whole year before Trump declared his candidacy for president. Russia's efforts had 2 main parts. 1, a vast social media campaign that favored Trump, and 2, cyber hacks of people connected to the Clinton campaign, DNC servers, and voting systems around the country. You might remember that 1 week after the Clinton campaign emails were published via WikiLeaks, Trump looked into the camera and said this.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
The report says that only 5 hours later, Russian intelligence tried to hack into Clinton's private email servers for the first time. However, Mueller found no evidence that the Trump campaign knew in advance that Russia would act on Trump's request. The report details about a dozen troubling interactions between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. Some of these interactions include sharing polling data with people connected to Russian intelligence, internal efforts to get Trump, buddy, our boy can become president of the USA and we can engineer it. I will get Putin's team to buy in on this. However, Mueller concluded that there was not enough evidence to meet the legal threshold for conspiracy or coordination between the Trump administration and the Russian government. For the purposes of this report, the term collusion has no legal meaning.
Yeah, and we're going to pause it there because I wanted to quickly talk about a collusion not having a legal meaning, because Trump is out there, no collusion, no collusion, no collusion. And if it has no legal meaning, then what? He's just using it to convince people that he's been exonerated from crimes of which he has not been exonerated. Am I correct?
Well, I don't know where the term first came up, but it's whether people conspired to do something. And so to say collusion doesn't go either way as far as anybody being able to be charged with something in which there would need to be.
Because it's not a legal thing.
Yeah, there would need to be reasonable suspicion and then probable cause to indict. So
it seems like they have reasonable suspicion and probable cause so that he could make money. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that as we play the clips from yesterday's testimony. But here is part 2 of that Mueller explainer video.
Let's go to Volume 2. Volume 2 explores about 10 instances. Let's go to Volume 2. Volume 2 explores about 10 instances where Trump possibly obstructed justice. However, right from the beginning, Mueller acknowledges that Department of Justice policy prohibits him from accusing a sitting president of a crime. Because of this, Mueller basically says that it's Congress's job to determine whether or not the president broke the law and what to do about it. Most of the instances of potential obstruction by Trump revolve around attempts to fire Mueller or to limit the scope of the investigation. One instance shows that Trump directed his White House counsel Don McGahn to fire Mueller, and in response, McGahn threatened to resign and commented to another member of Trump's team that, quote, "The president asked me to do crazy shit." Trump later tried to pressure McGahn into publicly denying this ever happened, but McGahn refused. In another instance, Trump tried to get former Attorney General Jeff Sessions to unrecuse himself from the investigation and take control of it. And yet in another instance, he tried to get Jeff Sessions to limit Mueller's investigation only to future election meddling. Mueller ultimately says that, quote, "If we had confidence that the president clearly did not commit obstruction of justice, we would so state," adding, "While this report does not conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him." So what can you do? 2 obvious things need to happen. First, we need to prioritize the security of future elections from foreign interference. And second, we must put pressure on Congress to move forward with the impeachment process. Mueller made it very clear that only Congress has the authority to prohibit a president's corrupt use of his power. For the sake of our democracy, and regardless of your political ideology, every American should support this process. Peace.
this Robert Mueller testifying yesterday was important just because of that, because people will watch TV and people will watch reporting on TV. They may or may not read 400 pages of a report, but the people who are asking questions asked him the appropriate questions. And now I have a clip here from Ted Lieu. He is a Democrat from California. This clip is this is like his summation of what happened. So here it is.
What we established today in the hearing is that we have a felon sitting in the White House. Donald Trump committed multiple crimes of obstruction of justice. Now, what the American people and other members of Congress do with that, we're going to see in the next few days. But this hearing clearly established that the president ordered Don McGahn to fire him, that the president ordered Don McGahn to then cover that up and create a false paper trail, and then the president ordered Corey Lewandowski to get Jeff Sessions to curtail the investigation. And then we went to great lengths to show how all those acts met every element of the crime of obstruction of justice. That's what we established today. And then we established that he also tampered with 2 witnesses. Those are all felonies, and we hope the American people see this for what it is. So for people who have read the Mueller report or followed these issues, this hearing was not surprising. For people who did not, this should have blown their minds, because they saw for the first time Robert Mueller saying yes to multiple instances of obstruction of justice by Donald Trump. We've got a felon right now in the White House. American people have seen it. We actually read back his own words to him, and he agreed to them. And those words show that Donald Trump committed multiple acts of obstruction of justice, which is a felony. I mean, it's not even a misdemeanor. These are straight-up felonies that Robert Mueller himself said someone could go to jail for a very long time.
I've noticed, I woke up this morning, there's a lot of reporting out there that everyone's disappointed, that Democrats are disappointed, didn't go as well. What did they expect to happen? They would just leave the session, close the door, and impeach him immediately? Of course there's going to be meetings, and now they're all going on break, so it was a terrible time to have this, in my opinion. But, the court of public opinion is out there. I noticed that BuzzFeed, The Times, and a whole bunch of other places said, the Democrats were very disappointed. Yeah, of course. Well, Nadler wanted Pelosi to impeach right away, to call for impeachment, and Pelosi is still sitting on the brake on that. I'm not sure why. Maybe Dr. Malveux will have some more ideas about that. We're also opening up our phone lines to you if we can. The phone line is 212-209-2877. Eric Swalwell, the guy who was running for president then dropped out. He's a California Democrat. He basically said that we showed the president sought to cover up his role in working with Russians by committing at least 10 acts of obstruction. Obstruction, it's proven he did obstruction. The only reason that Congress can't prosecute him is because the Department of Justice says you can't indict a sitting president. And the Department of Justice, Bill Barr, was hired for that purpose. So we've got serious corruption here. King, your thoughts?
I agree with you. I think Volume 2 was the place where everything stood out, and I think the obstruction could move forward if there's the will to do it.
Yeah.
And the Democrats may tear themselves apart if they don't get on this bandwagon, because the people are probably going to get behind this as more information comes out.
I hope so. And I think that was kind of the point of this, that the people see what's happening. They see in the report what's going on. We're having Dr. Julianne Malveux coming on the show in a moment or two, but I did want to remind everyone a couple of things. Number one, the Puerto Rico governor resigned following weeks of historic protests after his sexist and anti-gay text leaked. There was a big, go on the internet, so I don't have the video of it, but go on the internet and see the big party that happened at Grand Central Station yesterday when that was announced. It was huge. There was dancing and joy and celebration, and so I just wanted to bring you that as well. Very important.
And so I tried to do a little historical and constitutional research to figure out what was going to happen next. So it turns out that the Secretary of State is the person who succeeds the rest of the term of the president. There's just one problem. The Secretary of State resigned on July 13th.
Oh.
And so whoever's next, it might be the justice person or the education person. The secretaries are all in line one after another. So depending on how many of them will be left, someone's going to step up.
That's
but it doesn't look
fascinating.
good, because the Secretary of State before was the head of the Puerto Rican Tourism Board, so you could see.
Well, that's great. Let's get rid of all of them at the same time.
Well, that's the thing.
Moving
like,
along.
Like bowling 10-pin. But
maybe there'll be an environmental secretary, and that guy can get it, or woman.
Can you imagine what that person's background is?
Oh, gosh. They work for, like, Exxon, Chevron, and before that. Well, we'll see. Let's see what happens. You know, you got to start somewhere, and at least they didn't get the Pence, right? They got rid of the head, and then they didn't get the Pence of Puerto Rico. Hopefully they can continue their fight to get some justice in that area of our country, right? Let's remind everyone of that. Hey, we are doing our fund drive here on WBAI 99.5 FM, the People's Radio, and what a beautiful day it is to be doing fund driving. We are not expecting any rain. It's mostly cloudy, 73 right now. Another mild day, going up only to 85 degrees, not expecting really, any rain in the forecast. Kind of tomorrow, 88 degrees and sunny. Saturday, 85 degrees and sunny. And Sunday, 90 degrees and sunny. Going a little hot on Monday and Tuesday, a little past 90, but not like 100. So we'll take what we can get over here in New York City and the New York area. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Today, I brought you some gifts for becoming a WBAI member or for donating today to WBAI. We had this was a big favorite in the last pledge drive, and I know you guys wanted more, and I'm very grateful that we were able to get some more. We have Ted Rall's brilliant geographic biography of the rise of Donald Trump. That means cartoons, if you're not aware of who Ted Rall is, one of our premier cartoonists, political cartoonists, and he has also been persecuted by both the state and by the Fourth Estate, which is supposed to be, by mainstream media. So there's a whole story behind him, but his graphic biography of the rise of Donald J. Trump is, first of all, hilarious, and I think we absolutely need that. And second of all, historical. So for a gift of $25, we will be happy to send you Ted Rall's book. It is just hysterical. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen the book, but I met Ted Rawls when he got an Aronson Award, and he's a great guy. In addition to doing these cartoons, he's a great person. He
came on the show last drive, and I know there was a lot of people who wanted it, and we ran out of the premium. So if you're one of those people, or if you're just tuning in now, for a gift of $75, we can give you that beautiful graphic biography of the rise of Donald Trump. What's more to say about that other than that's what I would want? Especially as a gift in order to support the news that I want, that I'm bringing to you every day, right? So
yeah, I think the book fits in the theme of our show. We're going to be light and heavy and have fun at the same time.
Thank you.
And that's what I like about the way he does this. You can laugh your way through the misery and the fight back.
And if you want something slightly more serious, you can get, for a contribution of $50, our gift to you would be A Citizen's Guide to Impeachment by Barbara Rednofsky. It's basically spotlighting the particular and precise rules of impeachment. It talks, this is a good time to get this one, because we may very well be going there. It gives an explanation of basically the grounds for impeachment, the high crimes and misdemeanors, and the book also details the origin of impeachment. British law, as it turns out, and the rules set out by our founding fathers in the Constitution, who hopefully had the foresight to see that we have a corrupt TV president oligarch in the office, and we need him out. So that book is our gift to you, A Citizen's Guide to Impeachment by Barbara Radnofsky. If you can make your contribution for this round of pledge drives to us, the phone number to pledge at is 516-620-3602.
That is
516-620-3602.
3602.
Call in now, because we practice that for you. I also want to say that if you are unable to donate or you don't donate, your morning radio is going to sound like this. And that's no good to wake up. Silence. There will be silence. So this is all listener sponsored. We don't have grants from the Koch brothers or anything. Or worse, your morning radio may sound like this. Hey, everybody, we're listening to some things that you don't need to hear about, and we are convincing your children they need short skirts and makeup in order to be okay in the world. Hey, we've got some free tickets to you to go watch some overly sexualized content. Thanks for tuning in. It's 14 degrees.
It's 4.5 minutes after 8 o'clock, and you're listening to the much rocking sounds of Jocko. And hey, how about that impeachment? Who cares about impeachment? Why don't you buy this soda and this whatever else you don't need?
Sell stuff. Okay, so now hopefully we have convinced you of your
Aren't you glad we're so much more mellow than that?
Well, slightly.
Yeah.
We have a lot to be not mellow about, but at least it's things of substance. We're not mellow.
Right.
Of something. Anyway, 516-620-3602, 516-620-3602 is our pledge line. I do want to thank Dr. Malveux for sitting through that entire pitch, and we appreciate her coming on today. Dr. Malveux, thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Juliana, to be with you.
Oh, I'm so glad you could come because you were the anchor of WBAI and basically Pacifica's live coverage of the Mueller report. Can you talk about what your thoughts about what's going on? And mind you, I have like 100 clips that we're going to play too.
I thought it was sad. I think that the Mueller that I saw was not the Mueller that I know. And I've met him a couple of times. Actually, funny story, I went to speak at the FBI at 2001. It was really hilarious. And when my Speakers Bureau called and said they want you at the FBI for Black History Month, I'm like, is this a scheme? Is this a setup? Are they going to arrest me when I get there? And she said, no, they already paid your fee. I don't pay you until you talk. So I went, but when I saw him, and he was very gracious, I put my hands up like, okay, arrest me. And he cracked up, And we both cracked up.
Well, I'm sure he's exhausted underneath all the pressure that.
Yeah, but it just doesn't seem right. He doesn't seem like the assertive, smart person that I had contact with. Now
That's interesting.
He the number of times he said, I can't answer that question. I received your question. That was really frustrating. Mm-hmm. Now, I know that he had the letter from Barr, and I think that's also frustrating and intimidating. We don't know what the letter said, but we know that it put certain areas off limits. But even with that, and even with his fog, and it was a fog, someone sent me a text that said, could he mumble a little louder? Which was kind of funny.
Yeah.
But even with all of that, there were some breakthroughs. Mm-hmm. He did say that the orange orangutan could be indicted after his presidency.
Yes, we actually have some clips. Can we go through the clips with you, Dr. Malveux, and you can give some context of what we have here? We've got Nadler. Okay, so let's start with Representative Val Demings. She's a Democrat of Florida.
She was amazing.
She was
so good.
So awesome. And she talked about lies. First of all, I did want to point out so many people on that panel, Democrats, were from like Florida, Alabama, Louisiana. What's going on? We've got the whole Southeast. We've got the Deep South trying to get rid of President Trump. I thought that was interesting. Very interesting. Okay, so let's hear that lies clip, and then we can talk about it.
Director Mueller, a couple of my colleagues right here wanted to talk to you or ask you about lies. So let's talk about lies. According to your report, page 9, volume 1, witnesses lied to your office and to Congress. Those lies materially impaired the investigation of Russia interference, according to your report. Other than the individuals who pled guilty to crimes based on their lying to you and your team, did other witnesses lie to you?
I think there are probably a spectrum of witnesses in terms of those who are not telling the full truth, and those are outright liars.
Thank you very much. Outright liars. It is fair to say then that there were limits on what evidence was available to your investigation of both Russia election interference and obstruction of justice.
That's true, and it's usually the case.
And that lies by Trump campaign officials and administration officials impeded your investigation.
I would generally agree with that.
Thank you so much, Director Mueller. You will be hearing more from me in the next hearing, so I yield the balance of my time to Mr. Correa.
New information from him. With the Democrats, with both sides, but with the Democrats, you had two kinds of questions. You had those who elicited new information, and you had those that just, basically ran through the, oh, you're wonderful, oh, were they liars, yes, no. But, she was one of the few who really stood out, as on time. But she is a former, I'll tell you who the other one was, who I really enjoyed, and he was a Republican, is Will Hurd.
Will Hurd is I think we have a clip of him, too. We got a clip of him, too. Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
No, I don't have that one right this second, but yes.
But Will Hurd, only black Republican, in the House of Representatives was very, very pointed and critical. And both he and Val Demings are former law enforcement officials. And so they got it in ways that others didn't. Now, a lot of people said, and I did too, I mean, this shit was, excuse my language, but it was like watching paint dry at some level.
It was really boring. But when I got all these clips together, see, I'm so excited about it because we just clipped the most important things and jammed them together, which is why it's important for media to do their job, because we need to pick out what it is. Now, the next clip I have is when Nadler, our very own Jerry Nadler from our listening area, talked about obstruction and exoneration, and then obstruction and Trump going to jail. So let's talk about that.
Director Mueller, the President has repeatedly claimed that your report found there was no obstruction and that it completely and totally exonerated him. But that is not what your report said, is it?
Correct. It is not what the report said.
And now, reading from page 2 of volume 2 of your report that's on the screen, you wrote, quote, "If we had confidence after a thorough investigation of the facts that the President clearly did not commit obstruction of justice, we would so state. Based on the facts and the applicable legal standards, however, we are unable to reach that judgment," close quote. Now, does that say there was no obstruction?
No.
So the report did not conclude that he did not commit obstruction of justice. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And what about total exoneration? Did you actually totally exonerate the President?
No.
Now, in fact, your report expressly states that it does not exonerate the President.
It does. The finding indicates that the President was not that the President was not exculpated for the acts that he allegedly committed.
Yeah, no victory flag for President Trump on that one, eh?
No victory flag at all. And in fact, here's the bottom line. He was not exonerated. That's what the headlines ran with. He was not exonerated. However, Mueller's muddled, somewhat ineffective. I mean, a lot of people said it looked like he was ill.
I wouldn't, my head is all everywhere. Like, oh, they probably maybe went outside and drummed outside his apartment all night long, or they drugged him, or, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, my conspiracy theorist said they put something in his water.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't, as I said, I've met him a couple of times, been in his company. I found him, assertive, kind of funny, with in a dry kind of way, not at all retiring or reticent. This was like he was mumbling, he was fumbling. It was sad. And so I wonder what happened, but at the same time, in the midst of all that, Val Demings got something out of him, Nadler got something out of him, several people got stuff out of him that really did advance the case. This president has been out of order, out of line, out of control, and impeachable.
Julianne, let me ask you something. I agree with that. It's possible that he's getting up in age. On the other hand, he's on the hot seat and he's having to testify, and it's a typical device that people use, especially people who know how to testify, that they play everything low key. They say as little as possible. He said, well, if that's in the record, it's in the record. He didn't elaborate. But what I wanted to ask you is...
But non-lawyers don't know that.
Right.
They're like, what's happening?
Right.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask you is that there was no expectation that this investigation, to me, was going to actually find him guilty. What normally happens when these investigations move on is that they say there's reasonable suspicion or probable cause, which is enough to move forward. So this whole thing about we could not include that there was obstruction wouldn't have been part of the task of this group anyway, to actually conclude there was.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right about that. I think that if he had to follow the guidelines laid out by the DOJ, he could not come to a conclusion. What I know about him, what many people know about him, he's a by-the-book kind of guy, and you saw that. But even with but he still colored outside the lines a little bit. He colored outside the lines when he said that these people were largely untruthful.
Well, I have a lot of those clips. Let's play them so we can hear. I think what's really exciting here is that this was This was like a PR stunt to wake people up, right? Because they didn't read the
most
report.
people didn't read that. That's what a lot of people are saying. Is like most people didn't read the report. So if you didn't read the report, this at least gave you like the Cliff Notes version of the report.
And I think it's really important. And for me, I believe that it's an opportunity to drum up people who want impeachment to contact their representatives, especially because I think that's what Nancy Pelosi is waiting for, a giant upswell of people upset. So we should listen to these clips because, boy, they upset you if you just listen to all the important clips all together.
You're right. I mean, I think that if you watch the whole 6 hours.
If you watch the whole thing, you're ready to take a nap.
You want to pull your hair out. But,
or somebody else's.
I have two. I have very little hair, so I'm not trying to pull my hair out. But anyway, but if you got those, if you drill down to those special moments, which I think you have, I think there's something to say. So
let's play some.
Let's listen to some of them.
So we have another one about obstruction here.
Does obstruction of justice warrant a lot of time in jail if you were convicted?
Yes.
Director Mueller, the president has repeatedly claimed that your report found there was no obstruction and that it completely...
To go to jail? Yeah. Oh, time's up. Okay, now we have another one. Why did Trump want Mueller fired? This is Representative Ted Deutsch. I think it's Deutsch. He's also from Florida, the 22nd, a Democrat. Why did Trump want Mueller fired?
Director Mueller, why did the President of the United States want you fired?
I can't answer that question.
Well, on page 89 in your report on volume 2, you said, and I quote, substantial evidence indicates that the president's attempts to remove the special counsel were linked to the special counsel's oversight of investigations that involve the president's conduct, and most immediately, to reports that the president was being investigated for potential obstruction of justice, close quote. Director Mueller, you found evidence, as you lay out in your report, that the president wanted to fire you because you were investigating him for obstruction of justice. Isn't that correct?
That's what it says in the report, yes. And I stand behind the report.
Director Mueller, that shouldn't happen in America. No president should be able to escape investigation by abusing his power. But that's what you testified to in your report. The president ordered you fired. The White House counsel knew it was wrong. The president knew it was wrong. In your report, it says there's also evidence the president knew he should not have made those calls to McGahn. But the president did it anyway. He did it anyway. Anyone else who blatantly interfered with a criminal investigation like yours would be arrested and indicted on charges of obstruction of justice. Director Mueller, you determined that you were barred from indicting a sitting president. We've already talked about that today. That is exactly why this committee must hold the president accountable. I yield back.
Yeah, and now we have Steve Cohen. He's a Democrat from Tennessee, southern states, ones that you are so hopeful when a powerful Democrat comes out of. So this one's on recusal.
Despite knowing that Attorney General Sessions was not supposed to be involved in the investigation, the president still tried to get the Attorney General to unrecuse himself after you were appointed special counsel. Is that correct?
Yes.
In fact, your investigation found that at some point after your appointment, quote, the president called Sessions at his home and asked if he would unrecuse himself. Is that not true?
It's true.
Now, that wasn't the first time the president had asked Sessions to unrecuse himself, was it?
I know there were at least 2 occasions.
And one of them was with Flynn, and one of them was when Sessions and McGahn flew to Mar-a-Lago to meet with the president. Sessions recalled that the president pulled him aside to speak alone and suggested he should do this unrecusal act. Correct?
Correct.
And then when Michael Flynn, a few days after Flynn entered a guilty plea for lying to federal agents and indicated his intent to cooperate with that investigation, Trump asked to speak to Sessions alone again in the Oval Office and again asked Sessions to unrecuse himself. True?
I refer you to the report for that.
Page 109, Volume 2. Thank you, sir. Do you know of any point when the president personally expressed anger or frustrations at Sessions?
I'd have to pass on that.
Do you recall, and I think it's at page 78 of Volume 2, the president told Sessions, "You were supposed to protect me. You were supposed to protect me," or words to that effect?
Correct.
And is the Attorney General supposed to be the Attorney General of the United States of America or the consigliere for the president?
United States of America.
Thank you, sir.
One more, Margaret, and then we'll get your thoughts about it. This I thought was the major one, and it came from, when a Republican, Ken Buck, from Colorado, was asking him questions. Pretty sure he regretted his line of questioning after this happened. Go ahead.
Was there sufficient evidence to convict President Trump or anyone else with obstruction of justice?
We did not make that calculation.
How could you not have made the calculation with the regulation?
Because,
Was there sufficient evidence to convict President Trump or anyone else with obstruction of justice?
We did not make that calculation.
How could you not have made the calculation with the
Because
regulation?
the OLC opinion, Office of Legal Counsel, indicates that we cannot indict a sitting president. So one of the tools that a prosecutor would use is not there. The president cannot be charged with a crime.
Okay, but could you charge the president with a crime after he left office?
Yes.
You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office?
Yes.
Ethically, under the ethical standards?
Well, I'm not certain because I haven't looked at the ethical standards, but the OLC opinion says that the prosecutor, while he cannot bring a charge against the sitting president, nonetheless he can continue the investigation to see if there are any other persons who might be drawn into the conspiracy.
That was said. I mean, Mueller, like I said, he colored within the lines, but every now and then he stepped outside them. And that was one of those instances where it looked like he stepped outside the line. I don't think that anyone was anticipating that he would have said that. But he said it, and it was something that now we have to deal with. This president is indictable.
Yeah.
Now, what does that mean? We talked about it yesterday. Askia Muhammad, my dear buddy and comrade in crime, had me cracking up because he said he's not a conspiracy theorist, but he thought that 45 would try to stay in office forever. So that sounds like a conspiracy theorist to me. But anyway.
But they have been saying that, and now we're seeing good reason for him to try to do that so he can avoid jail time.
Yeah, but he looked great in the orange jumpsuit.
Yeah, it would match his face.
It would go with the rest of his energy.
Yes.
But in any case, it really is. What we know is that people who believe that this man is crooked, criminal, out of control, and out of order have to be organized to get rid of him. And even as some of this stuff energizes the base in the center left, it also energizes the base in the right. I mean, he has been expert at spinning himself as a victim. All these liberals are out to get him. And now he's begun to conflate Democrat with socialist. So when he says Democrats, he also says socialists.
Oh, good.
So,
Maybe he'll be doing us a favor. Everyone, fine.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm as left comes.
Yay.
But I'm also as realist comes. As I told someone yesterday, I was on somebody's podcast. I said, look, I'm over 60. I've been around the block so many times, it's not even funny. I got tire treads on my back. By that I mean, I understand that while we can hew to our principles, we also know that politics is the art of compromise. We're not going to get everything we want. What we really want is this sucker out of the office.
Exactly.
Excuse my language.
No.
That's what we want more than anything else.
So let's get on.
I really appeal to those millennials and those, folks who are like, Hillary wasn't perfect. No, she wasn't perfect. But she'd be a damn sight better than this.
Mm-hmm.
This man has changed the judiciary for a generation.
Dr. Malveux, we are out of time, unfortunately. This requires a lot of time to discuss, but I do appreciate you coming on, and I really appreciate you being one of our 2-point people in the Pacifica coverage yesterday. Your voice is exactly why we need Pacifica. So I do appreciate you doing that. It's not like they sent you a check. That you did that out of love and grace.
Pacifica, check. We don't even use those words in the same sentence. But anyway, I love being there yesterday with Askia. Love being on your program from time to time.
We're going to talk about getting you on here every week. Go ahead. You were going to make our pledge drive.
Folks, it's a pledge drive. So, if you value this kind of conversation, now's the time to pledge. Julianna is right when she talked about the mainstream media. I have mad respect for the folks, for Pacifica, for my friend Boyce Watkins, who's created his own station, his own channel. For folks who are saying, we don't have to do the mainstream media. But if you believe it, and Roland Martin as another, if you believe it, support it.
Thank you.
Support it. You don't have to give $1,000.
Yeah.
Give $50.
Exactly, and if you do that today, you'll get this great book about impeachment that we were talking about, which is important thing to read about, especially right now.
Especially right about now.
Yeah.
Julianna, always a pleasure.
Thank you so much,
King,
Julianne.
I think that was your voice I heard earlier.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Always a pleasure to be with you as well. We'll be together again. Take care.
Look forward
Have a blessed day.
You too,
Okay.
Dr. Malveux. We look forward to it, and we're hoping to get Dr. Malveux on more regularly. She hinted that she'd be willing to come back every week instead of every other week. Again, we are in our pledge drive, as Dr. Malveux said. Our phone number to pledge, call in and make your pledge is 516-620-3602, 516-620-3602. You can also do it quick by texting WBAI to 41444. Again, just text WBAI to 41444, or online, if it's your favorite way to go, give the number to WBAI.org. Takes, maybe 3 minutes to get through the whole process, and you can pick a premium that you like. Just give us a shout out. Say you're pledging in the name of Waking Up, so we know that you heard our show and that you're listening out there, and that we can appreciate you. For a pledge of $50 today, the gift we have for you is A Citizen's Guide to Impeachment by Barbara Radnofsky. I know you're not pledging for the book. I know you're pledging because you care about independent media. And, I don't know if you're going to hear out there, other than on independent media, the fact that this actually was a good thing, even though it was kind of a snoozer. Like when you cut up the clips and put them together, there's a lot of important stuff going on. And hopefully it will do the thing, even though it's like, right before everyone takes their vacation, where people get up in arms and start doing a little more pressuring. As Dr. Malveux said, those right-wingers are going to pressure their side. They're going to be up in arms, and they literally are going to be up in literal arms. So I think it's important that we make sure that our voices are heard to our representatives now, like today. Give a call, say you want to go ahead with impeachment. They need to hear from us.
And tell them about the Ted Rall book.
And tell them about the Ted Rall book. It's a great, brilliant graphic biography of the rise of Donald Trump. For a gift of $75, it is yours. Without further ado, we've blown through our song break. We've blown through our comedy break because we have a very special guest coming up right here for you.
Yes, and this is a celebration of the Young Lords Party that the New York chapter is going to have. The Young Lords Party was a Puerto Rican civil rights and human rights organization that was founded in Chicago in September of 1968. And the following year in Tompkins Square Park, the New York City chapter of the Young Lords Party was formed and took the history that started in Chicago around the country, but New York became one of the pivotal places. And so we have here Denise Oliver, who is a former member of the party, to join us today. And she also was a former professor at New Paltz and continued her activism after that. And so we want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Welcome to the program, Denise.
Good morning.
Hi. Thank you so much for being here with us.
So tell us, how did you end up joining the Young Lords?
I was working in East Harlem with an organization called the Real Great Society. We had a prep school for high school dropouts, and a number of us who were there working with RGS were recruited to go out to SUNY Old Westbury, a new experimental college that was being formed. And on the campus, we were involved in a lot of activities about discrimination on campus, etc. And part of that group, Mickey Melendez, Pablo Yoruba Guzman, and others, read an article in the Black Panther Party paper about the Young Lords in Chicago. So a group of Old Westbury students went to Chicago, met with Cha-Cha, and came back as the New York branch of the Young Lords.
And so what did you do as a Young Lords Party member? A lot of people have no idea what happens with that kind of commitment.
We used to say you're a Young Lord 25 hours a day. And
I like that.
Well, that was pretty serious. A day in the Lords, I got up at about 5 o'clock in the morning.
Just like we do.
Did your exercises, then people went out and picked up kids in the neighborhood to take them to the free breakfast program and then deliver them. We did free breakfast programs along with the Black Panther Party. And then you came back to the office and picked up a stack of Palante papers and went out to go sell them because the financial support of the organization was basically the sale of the newspaper.
So you had a lot of rank and file work, but then there were a lot of things that you took on, especially in El Barrio. So what were some of the big things that you fought or battled around?
The first thing that we addressed was garbage in the streets. At that time, there was no movement for environmental justice or whatever. We have those today. And so we didn't put a label on it, but it was very clear that the objective conditions in the community were horrific, with rats running across not only people's beds and into kids' cribs, but across the operating table at Lincoln Hospital.
Oh, my God.
So what'd you all do? So what'd you
do?
So what did you do? So we had this going on. What did you all do?
First, we started to try to force the sanitation department to come and clean up the streets because they sort of stopped garbage pickups at 96th Street. And, you know, the dividing line between people of color and people not, was 96th Street. So we started cleaning the streets, and people in the community got involved with us. We bagged up the garbage and whatever, but it didn't get picked up. So it got ripped open by rats and whatever. So what we ended up doing was piling it all in the middle of the avenue and setting it on fire.
Nice.
Which blocked traffic all the way down to the bottom of Manhattan.
So when you block the white people's traffic, then they were like, we gotta go get that garbage.
So then, of course, the city had to come and start cleaning it up because, it was interfering with business
Commerce.
as usual in New York. So that was what we called the garbage offensive.
And you did a lot of direct actions like that.
Yes.
King and I were talking about some of the things that were going on at the time yesterday, seemed like yesterday, but, when you guys were super active, when you were active, the Vietnam War, he was talking about that it was a kind of a different time there, and the tactics were, I don't know, how would you put it?
They were more intense. They were more direct. They involved principles like self-defense. Countries around the world were freeing themselves. So how did that influence the tactics and the positions that you all took, including in the 13-point program?
We're a revolutionary nationalist organization.
Right.
And coming out of the Rainbow Coalition established by Fred Hampton.
The real Rainbow Coalition.
Yes, not the one that was... Fred Hampton said, I am a revolutionary. Jesse Jackson said, I am somebody. I think there's a difference.
Guy.
So it wasn't just the Young Lords. There were groups like in New York, Iwo Kun, which was Asian activists. It means most righteous, harmonious fist. There were the Brown Berets, who were Chicanos on the West Coast. There later came the American Indian movement, and you had a group of white Appalachian whites called the Patriot Party, too, who were poor white folks in Chicago. So it was a rainbow.
Why don't we see, we're seeing a resurgence in activism. There's been activism since time immemorial, but Occupy Wall Street was a direct action kind of thing, and then different groups have splintered out from that. And now with Trump, we're seeing more people who weren't necessarily consider themselves revolutionaries, out picketing at the minimum. Can you talk about what you're seeing today with activism, and why aren't we setting garbage on fire in the street anymore? That seems like a fun...
Well, I'm seeing activism because I woke up early this morning and saw Ricky Rosselló has resigned.
Yes.
And a third of the people on the island of Puerto Rico took to the streets, and it had not... There were people from every political walk of life who took direct action, and he has resigned, and trending right now is the person who's going to take his place. People are demanding that she resign too.
We were talking earlier about that because I looked into the line of succession, and the Secretary of State would have been, but he resigned on the 13th. And so who is it next that you're saying should resign next?
It's Wanda Vasquez, and she's also involved in a bunch of messes. So no sooner than Ricky resigned, people have started demanding, even before she takes office, that people want all of the mess out.
Yes.
Period. And
they want to drain the swamp, but like for real.
Yeah. So I think people should take a look at who's taken to the streets. I mean, we took to the streets and in the neighborhood and took those kind of actions, and we now look 50 years later,
Good.
And we're seeing that kind of spirit.
Good
that
segue.
Kind of momentum.
Good segue, because the reason why we have you on at this moment is because tomorrow is going to be the big anniversary event. Could you tell us something about that?
We are holding our kickoff of our 50th year celebration because we're having events that will run through December of this year, dealing with specific topics, but our kickoff is at the Schomburg, and which we found to be very important because the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture is named for Arturo Schomburg, who was a black Puerto Rican. And I think a lot of people don't know that. So it's pretty significant even in terms of the site. But we will have both former young lords speaking about the history of the party, the relevance of the party, but things that are happening today. So there are also young people who are moving the movement forward, young artists, musicians, activists who will be part of the program. And it's already sold out.
Oh, no, but that's great.
Yeah, but folks, it's going to be first come, first serve, so we're still encouraging people to take their chance. The program was free. Lots of people signed up. We know that, in our conversations about this, that some folks just put their names down and don't show up, so there's still a possibility. And
you know how parties are. Like sometimes they still out in the street.
Yeah, we're counting on that. And so it's going to be this Friday, tomorrow, July 26th from 6 to 9 p.m. And it's going to be at the Schomburg Center for Research and Black Culture, which is 515 Malcolm X Boulevard. That's at 135th Street. And so
will you be setting any garbage on fire? Right in front. No. I want that so that we know where it is, like putting up a sign.
So any last point about the event or anything else that you want to say?
I'm happy that we have this chance to talk about that history to the current generation, because one of the things we know about controlling people is eradicate the history. And it too often, I know for myself, having taught at New Paltz for over 10 years, that my students, many of them white, but others, Latinx and African American and Caribbean, when I would bring up the young lords, I get blank looks. They never learned anything about our existence. And history, is written by the victors. And we have to take the steps to imprint that history when